Tonight, the rain falls heavy and the shadows grow long. Tonight, I have stories for you, 9 tales of terror, whispered by strangers who live them. True stories, real experiences. The kind that leave scars you can't see. Before we begin, 3 things you should know. First, this video was created for those who need to escape, to relax, to sleep, to drift away. You'll hear exactly 3 advertisements after the 3rd story, around the 45-minute mark. After that, the rest of this 2-hour journey is uninterrupted. Just you, me, and the rain. Second, every story you'll hear tonight earned its author $20. These are real people, sharing real experiences. If you have a terrifying tale of your own, I invite you to submit it. The link to our community is in the description below. Your story could be next. Third, if you're new here, consider subscribing. I promise you long videos, minimal interruptions, and meticulous editing. You won't hear me breathe. Ya won't hear filler. Just stories told the way they deserve to be told. Now settle in. Close your eyes if you wish. Let the rain wash away your day. The darkness is here, and so are we. Let's begin.
Story 1. The Wolf Whistle. A search and rescue horror. I want to tell you about my uncle. He was a sheriff's deputy back in the 1990s, working search and rescue in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. He's asked me to keep the exact location hidden, so let's just say it was remote, isolated, the kind of place where if you get lost, nature swallows you whole. This story takes place in the summer of 1992. It was a Tuesday morning when the call came in. A woman from Arizona, frantic. Her husband and young grandson, 11 years old, had driven up for a weekend camping trip the previous Friday. They were supposed to return Monday. They never came home. The search and rescue team assembled quickly. My uncle, 4 other deputies, 15 civilian volunteers, and 2 bloodhounds. They reached the campsite around noon. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. The tent stood untouched. Inside, they found belongings neatly arranged: truck keys, wallet, map, water, food. A pot filled with water and soggy macaroni noodles sat above a cold, dead fire pit. They'd left in a hurry. But why? The hounds caught their scent immediately, leading the team north into tens of thousands of acres of unforgiving wilderness. My uncle looked at his partner. They both shook their heads. They knew this would be a long search, but then something strange began. The hounds would pick up the scent in one grid square, then lose it completely in the adjacent areas. It happened multiple times, as if someone or something had plucked these 2 people up and placed them randomly throughout the forest. My uncle felt a chill run down his spine. Something wasn't right. As dusk fell, the team began returning to base. But my uncle and his partner, Rob, stayed behind. They always stayed when a child was involved. The thought of a scared 11-year-old boy alone in the dark woods was unbearable. They found a clearing, built a fire, and laid out their sleeping bags. Rob's bloodhound, Russ, curled up between them. The forest grew quiet. My uncle drifted off to sleep. He woke sometime later, eyes snapping open. Something was wrong. He sat up slowly, scanning the darkness. The fire had burned low. Shadows danced at the edge of the tree line. He felt it, an overwhelming sensation, like someone was watching him, studying him. "Hello?" he called out. "Sam, Frank, is that you? We're looking for you. Are you there?" Silence. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, just paranoia. Just the wits playing tricks. He lay back down, pulling his sleeping bag tight. Then he heard it. A whistle, not just any whistle, a wolf whistle. The kind you hear in cartoons when someone sees an attractive woman. Long, loud, deliberate, it came from the left, just past the tree line. My uncle shot upright, heart hammering. Russ was awake now too, ears peaked, whining toward the sound. "Hello," my uncle shouted. "I'm a deputy with the sheriff's office." "Do you need help?" "Sam? Frank?" No response. He called out again, louder this time. Rob stirred awake, groggy and confused. That's when the whistle came again. This time from the right, my uncle drew his sidearm. Rob grabbed his buck knife. They stood back to back, flashlights cutting through the darkness, scanning the tree line. Nothing. They called out for 10 more minutes, sweeping their lights across the forest. The whistle didn't come again, but they both felt it, that terrible certainty that something was out there, watching, waiting. They rebuilt the fire and agreed, no more sleep until dawn. The rest of the early morning passed in tense silence. As the sun began to rise, they searched the area. In the fresh mud near the clearing, they found 2 pairs of boot prints, adult-sized, recent. They decided to head back, get some rest, return later in the day with the full team. They were maybe 200 feet from the clearing when it happened. 2 simultaneous wolf whistles, one from the left,
one from the right, rang out behind them. My uncle spun around.
Flashlight raised. There, at the entrance to the clearing, stood 2 silhouettes, tall, motionless, backlit by the rising sun so their features were obscured, just dark shapes against the blinding light. "Hey!" my uncle shouted. "Stop!" He started toward them. Rob grabbed his arm. "Hard! Stop and think!" Rob hissed. "We're looking for 1 adult male and 1 11-year-old boy. Unless that kid's a giant, those aren't the people we're searching for." My uncle froze. Rob was right. Both figures were tall, at least 6 feet. Both stood with an eerie, unnatural stillness. "I'm not putting a civilian in danger," Rob said quietly. "Let's just go." They turned and walked quickly back to the trailhead, glancing over their shoulders the whole way. The figures didn't follow. When they met up with the rest of the search team and the sheriff, my uncle told them everything. Some scoffed, some rolled their eyes, but the sheriff believed them. He sent one of the deputies back out with an M16. The search continued. For 13 more days, they never found the missing man and his grandson. A few other team members reported hearing wolf whistles during the search, but my uncle never heard them again. To this day,
he wonders what happened to Sam and Frank.
And who or what were those 2 figures in the clearing? He still doesn't have answers. But on quiet nights, when the wind howls through the trees, he remembers those whistles, and he wonders if they're still out there, waiting. Story 2, The Man on the Roof, a childhood nightmare. I was probably 17 or 18 when this happened. My sister was in her early 20s. We've always been close, best friends really. We spent a lot of time together, especially during the summer. We lived in a small valley in what I'd call a quiet area.
Not dangerous, not particularly scary, just normal. I
walked around at night for years without
incident. But that night changed everything. Let me set the scene for you. There was a local elementary
school near our house. 1 big building, 2 playgrounds, 2 large fields. A small fence ran around the perimeter, and just outside that fence was a side street that led to the main road. My sister and I often went there late at night. We'd sit on the swings, talk, laugh, just decompress. This particular summer night, we went to the grocery store around 10 p.m., grabbed some snacks and drinks, then headed to the playground. We were sitting on our favorite swing set, talking about nothing important, when I heard it, a sharp sound like something hard hitting the gravel in front of us. I paused, listening. At first, I thought it was rain or hail, but the sky was clear. A few minutes later, it happened again.
Closer this time. Did you hear that? I whispered. My sister stopped mid-sentence.
We sat in silence. Then it happened again.
Even closer. Rocks, I said, my voice barely audible. It's rocks! Another one hit the gravel near our feet. My sister scrambled out of her swing.
I did the same, stepping back toward the metal poles of the structure, trying to shield myself. Then another rock fell, this time landing right on the wood chips beneath the swings. Someone was throwing them.
As my heart hammered in my chest.
We frantically scanned the area, looking for movement. Someone hiding behind a wall, crouched in the shadows. That's when I saw him. Standing on the roof of the school, a tall silhouette, draped in something long, a trench coat,
Maybe, or a cape. It hung down to his ankles.
His head was covered by a pointed hood. I couldn't see his face, just the dark outline of a man stock still.
Staring down at us. Oh my God! My sister breathed. We both stood frozen.
Staring back, then another rock pinged off the metal pole right in front of us. "We need to go," I said, my voice shaking.
Now, I ducked down, grabbed my things and started moving.
My sister did the same. We kept one hand up, shielding our faces in case another rock came flying. That's when we heard it. A scream, not a shout.
Not a yell, a scream.
High-pitched, guttural, inhuman. The kind of sound you hear in horror movies, except this was real.
And it was directed at us. My gaze snapped back to the man on the roof. He hadn't moved, but that sound, it came from him. We ran. We bolted out of the playground.
Through the gap in the fence, onto the street. We didn't stop running until we were blocks away, gasping for air, looking back to make sure he wasn't chasing us. He never came. My sister, trying to break the tension, laughed nervously.
Imagine if he just came sprinting out after us, making that sound. Stop! I interrupted, tears streaming down my face. Please, don't! Because in that moment, I could picture it perfectly.
And it terrified me. We eventually made it home, shaken but unharmed. Here's the thing, though. When we walked past the school on our way back, staying on the opposite side of the street, we looked up at the roof. He was gone. No sign of him on the roof.
Around the school or on the street, just is gone to this day.
I don't know who he was or what he wanted.
Maybe it was just some bored teenager pulling a prank. Maybe he thought it was harmless. But I'll tell you this, it didn't feel harmless. It felt like we were being hunted. And sometimes on quiet nights, I still think about that scream.
Story 3. The Fisherman's Discovery. Found in the river, this story comes from my time training to become a detective. I'm in my final year now, specializing in murder and organized crime cases. Throughout my training, I've seen a lot of disturbing things. Crime scene photos, autopsy reports, case files that would make most people sick. But there's one case from the archives that I'll never forget. It takes place in the 1990s, right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The country I'm from, let's just call it a post-Soviet state, was in chaos. Law enforcement was barely functional.
Organized crime ran rampant.
Mafia groups controlled entire cities, the place I was born.
One of the worst daily shootings.
Bodies in rivers, robberies, carjackings. It was like living in a war zone. This particular case happened in 1992, early autumn. A young man, 22 years old, went missing. He had ties to the local mob, so when his family reported him gone, the police assumed he'd either fled town or been killed. They searched for a week. Nothing. Then 3 teenage boys decided to go fishing. They were 12, 13, and 14 years old. It was around 5 p.m. on a warm evening. The sun was still up. They walked through their school's playground, waving to the principal as they passed. He was outside talking to the groundskeeper. The boys headed down to the river, a 3-minute walk through a trail. They set up their rods, cast their lines, and waited. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. 15 minutes. Still nothing. One of the boys got impatient. He decided to recast his line. "I got something," he shouted suddenly.
I got one. I got a bite.
The other 2 boys ran over, excited to see the catch. He started reeling it in, struggling with the weight. "This is huge," he yelled. But as the line came closer, their excitement turned to horror. There was no fish on the line. The hook had snagged on something else. Human flesh. A head. A human head, rotting, decomposed, the fishing hook embedded in their skin. The boy holding the rod vomited instantly. The others stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. Then they ran. They sprinted back to the school, bursting into the principal's office, screaming, panicking. The principal thought it was a prank at first, but when he saw their faces, pale, terrified, shaking, he knew something was terribly wrong. He followed them back to the river. When he saw the head still hooked on the fishing line, he went silent, his face drained of color. He took the boys back to his office and called the police. The forensic team arrived. Statements were taken. The head was identified. It was the missing 22-year-old man. He'd been murdered by the mob, killed for owing money. They'd cut him into pieces and dumped him in the river. Only his head and torso were ever recovered. His family couldn't even bury his body properly. I'm not a faint-hearted person. I chose this career knowing what I'd see. But reading those witness statements, the boys describing what they found, the family's grief, it broke something in me. Those boys were just kids. They were supposed to catch fish that day. Instead, they found a nightmare. And the people who did this?
Most of them were never caught.
The mafia owned the police back then. Justice didn't exist. I became a detective because of cases like this, because someone needs to fight for the victims. Someone needs to make sure the monsters don't win. Stay safe, everyone. Story 4. The shadow in the basement. Not a ghost. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my family lived in this massive, strange old house on the edge of a small rural town in Pennsylvania. My little brother and I went to different schools because of a district restructuring, which meant we took different buses. I was always the last to leave in the morning and the first to get home in the afternoon. That meant it was my job to make sure all the lights were off and all the doors were locked before I left for school. One morning, I noticed the basement light was on. The door was open, that was weird, but not alarming. I walked over, turned off the light, and locked the door. When I got home that afternoon, the light was on again. The door was open. I remember thinking I was losing my mind. Maybe I'd been too tired that morning. Maybe I'd imagined locking it, so I turned off the light, closed the door, and went about my day. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was standing at the top of the basement staircase when I looked down. There was a figure at the bottom.
A man, tall, shadowy, just standing there in the darkness, staring up at me. I screamed, slammed the door, pushed a cabinet in front of it, and ran upstairs to my room. I didn't tell my family. I was convinced it was a ghost.
And I didn't think anyone would believe me. For 6 months, I kept it to myself. Then one winter, things started going missing around the house. Small things at first. Food, tools, clothing. My parents blamed me and my brother. We insisted we were innocent, so one night my mom, dad, brother, and I grabbed flashlights and searched the house, trying to figure out how someone, or something, could be getting inside. That's when we found it. A small hole on the outside of the house. It led to a crawl space. And that crawl space led directly into the basement. The thing I'd seen in the basement wasn't a ghost, it was a real person, a real man who had been climbing into our house, worming through the crawl space and coming up through the basement. I'd been alone in that house with him.
Multiple times. The realization hit me like a freight train. If I'd gone down those stairs that day,
If I'd tried to confront him, I don't want to think about what could have happened. The police were called. They searched the property and surrounding area, but the man was long gone. I don't believe in ghosts anymore, but I believe in something much worse. I believe in the monsters who look just like us. Story 5. Last ride, a Jeep, a friend, and regret. This story is hard for me to tell, but I think it needs to be told. The year started terribly for me. My mom had just passed away and the whole world shut down. I had to mourn alone during lockdown. All my friendships were fading.
I felt like I was drowning. Then my neighbor Ryan reintroduced himself. Ryan was 21.
I was 18. We didn't become best friends right away, but he invited me to a bonfire at his place, and that's where I met Colin and Aidan. Those two were inseparable, always talking, always laughing. Their girlfriends complained about how much they monopolized each other. We all became close quickly.
Ryan, Colin, Aidan and me.
They came to my mum's funeral, even though they'd never met her. They showed up when my childhood friends didn't. For a while, things felt okay again. Then came the last Saturday before my freshman semester of college. It was raining that day, unexpectedly heavy, but we were all together, drinking, having a good time. That's when Colin pitched the idea. He owned this beat-up old Jeep. His grandfather had given it to him years ago. He was planning to sell it the next day, but he wanted to take it out one last time.
A joyride.
Just the four of us. Red flags went off in my head immediately. We'd been drinking. The roads were wet. The Jeep had no doors, no top. It was dangerous, but I didn't want to be the youngest guy in the room telling everyone to be careful. I didn't want to kill the vibe, so I said nothing. Worst decision of my life. We piled in. Me and Aidan in the back. Ryan in the passenger seat. Colin driving. At first, it was fine. The music was loud, the rain was falling, and we were laughing. I started to relax. Then I looked over. Aidan was standing up. No seatbelt.
Swaying with the movement of the Jeep. Dude, sit down, I yelled, grabbing his arm. He didn't listen.
He was too drunk to understand how dangerous it was. I looked at Colin and Ryan in the front.
Neither of them seemed to notice or care. I kept pulling on Aidan, trying to get him to sit. That's when I heard it. A strange noise coming from the tire. I looked back just in time to see the rear of the Jeep swinging back and forth, the wheels locked up. We flipped. I woke up to ringing in my ears.
The sky above me, pain shooting through my body. I was still in my seatbelt, but we were no longer on the road. The Jeep had slammed into a guardrail at an awkward angle, hanging off the edge. I coughed up blood. My hands were shaking. Colin and Ryan were in the front. Their airbags had deployed. Ryan was screaming, his arm bent at an unnatural angle, nearly snapped in half. Colin's face was covered in cuts, shards of glass embedded in his skin, but Aidan wasn't in the Jeep. I stumbled out, calling his name. My voice cracked with panic. I found him 40 feet away, lying face down by a tree. I ran to him, dropped to my knees.
Rolled him over, blood. So much blood. I pressed my shirt to his face, trying to stop the bleeding.
But it wouldn't stop.
It kept pouring. That's when I realized I wasn't just wiping away blood. I was wiping away pieces of his face. Flesh, tissue, bone. It was all in my hand, I screamed.
I scooted back, shaking, sobbing. There was nothing I could do. He was already gone. I don't sleep much anymore. Maybe 3 to 5 hours a night. I don't talk to Colin or Ryan anymore either. We can't look at each other without remembering. There's no villain in this story. No creepy intruder.
No ghost. Just 4 dumb young adults who made a terrible decision. And one of us paid for it with his life. Aidan didn't deserve to die that night, but he did. And I'll carry that with me forever.
Story 6. The photograph. Discord's darkest story. A few years ago, I was part of a Discord server dedicated to true scary stories. People would share their own personal experiences. Some sounded made up, sure, but every once in a while, someone would post something that made your blood run cold. I've read a lot of disturbing things on that server. But there's one story I've never forgotten. The person who posted it started by assuring us it wasn't fake. They said that even as an adult, thinking about what happened still caused them stress. They explained that their early years were rough. Their dad died from a drug overdose when they were really young, so they were raised by a single mum in a small apartment. Mum tried to date, hoping to find them a stepfather. But on the night of one particular date, their grandma, who usually babysat, was working. So the storyteller, around 9 or 10 years old, was left alone in their mom's ground floor apartment. It wasn't a big deal. They had their Yu-Gi-Oh cards and a box set of the cartoon. They'd be fine for an hour or two. They were sitting on the couch, playing with their cards, watching TV, when they heard it. Tapping on the window, they got up, walked over, and pulled back the curtain. A stranger's face stared back at them. Not their grandpa, not an uncle. A complete stranger. Confused, they backed away from the window, letting the curtain fall. Then, crash. Glass shattered onto the carpet. Another crash.
More glass. The stranger was breaking the window. The storyteller dropped their cards and ran out the back door, across the yard, to a neighbor's house.
They pounded on the door, looking over their shoulder. Terrified the man was chasing them. The neighbor answered, calmed them down, and called the police immediately. Then they called the mom, who rushed home. When the police arrived, one of them approached the mom and showed her something in a clear plastic evidence bag. The mom's face went pale. She knelt down and hugged her child tight, fighting back tears. The neighbor gasped. The storyteller didn't understand what was happening, but they knew instinctively that something was very, very wrong. They stayed at their grandma's house for a week while the apartment was repaired. New locks, new windows, cameras installed. The whole family was terrified, but the storyteller didn't know why. Not until years later, when they were a teenager, that's when their mum finally explained. The thing the police officer showed her, the thing in the plastic evidence bag, was a photograph. A photograph of a young boy, curled up in bed, sleeping soundly. That boy was the storyteller. The photo had been taken recently,
maybe a week before the break-in.
The stranger had broken into the apartment while they slept, stood over their bed and taken a picture. Then he came back. The family only felt safe again when they heard news of a man whose pattern matched their experience, being arrested and extradited to another state. But the storyteller never forgot. Someone had been in their room, watching them sleep, taking pictures, and if they hadn't run that night, that's the story that haunted me most on that Discord server. Not the ghost stories, not the spooky skeletons, the real ones, the ones that could have easily happened to any of us. Story 7, The Man with Mannequin Legs. A Predator's Trail. I'm an electrician.
I'm in my 30s now and I've been doing this job for about 7 years.
I'm a small woman, 5'2", maybe 125 pounds. I'm very aware of my size and my limitations, especially when I'm working alone in strangers' homes. I served in the military. I've trained in hand-to-hand combat. I have a concealed weapons permit. I feel as prepared as someone like me can be, but nothing prepared me for the man with the mannequin legs. It was a Friday night, almost 2 years ago. I'd already worked a long day.
I was exhausted.
Ready to go home. Then I got an emergency dispatch, loss of power in a condo unit across town.
He grumbled, but I went. The building was old, low income, run down. As soon as I pulled up,
my gut screamed at me, don't go in there. I'd been doing this job for 7 years, and I'd never felt that before. So I texted my office manager, my boyfriend, and my mother. I sent them my GPS location, the client's name, and his address. I wrote, if you don't hear from me every 20 minutes until I tell you I've left, call me first. If I don't answer, call the police. I rang the doorbell. A gruff, raspy voice answered, like someone who smoked far too many cigarettes. Who is it? Electrician, I said. He buzzed me in. I walked up the stairs and the smell hit me immediately. Unwashed bodies, stale alcohol, wet ashtrays. He opened his door. He was tall, gaunt, unshaven, dark, heavy bags under his eyes. His clothes were stained with fluids, bodily or food, I couldn't tell. The apartment was a disaster. Empty beer cans stacked on tables, A plastic whiskey bottle skidded across the floor as I stepped inside. He explained the problem. Some circuits worked, others didn't. I told him he needed to check the panel. It was in his bedroom. Of course it was. I stepped over garbage, discarded clothing and burn marks in the carpet. The kitchen sink was piled high with rotting food. When I entered the bedroom, I stopped. A bare mattress, no sheets, no pillows, sat in the center of the room. That's always a red flag. No one in their right mind sleeps on a bare mattress, but what really caught my attention was the mannequin. The top half of a naked, dirty mannequin lay on the bed. It looked like it had been stolen from an abandoned storefront and hacked apart with a dull saw. And on the floor, posed like it was modeling shoes, were the mannequin's legs. They'd been crudely separated from the torso.
A hole had been drilled between them.
Lines were drawn at the joints, like surgical markings. My breath caught in my throat. Then I saw it, a faint red light flashing near the man's ankle. An ankle monitor. Department of Corrections, this man was a registered offender.
Recently released, he led me to the panel,
Which was, of course, in the bedroom closet. I had to turn my back to him to work. I could feel him standing behind me, watching, his breath on the back of my neck. I worked as fast as I
could. I need to grab something from my truck, I said.
My voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. I went outside, got my concealed weapon, and shoved it into my pants. Then I went back in. I finished the repair, told him I'd send an estimate for a full panel replacement, and got out of there as fast as I could. He watched me walk to my truck, stared at me from the driveway. I drove a few blocks away before I stopped, shaking. When I got back to the office, I Googled his name. One of the first results was a news article. He'd just been released from prison after serving 2 years for stalking a woman, a waitress he met at a breakfast joint. When she threatened to report him, he broke into her home and held her hostage. He told her he'd kill her, dismember her.
Make her disappear. She escaped.
He was arrested 2 years in prison, 5 years of monitored probation, and now he was calling my company, trying to get me to come back. He called almost daily for weeks, offered to pay me more money if I'd return. My company put a do not service on his address. They removed my name and photo from the website. They randomized my schedule so he couldn't track me. I never saw him again, but I'll never forget the mannequin legs or the look in his eyes. Story 8, Cecil Hotel, Skid Row at midnight. This happened when I was 19. My sister and I took a trip to Los Angeles with 2 friends, Savannah and Eric. My sister and her cousin were going to a concert, and we were just tagging along for the day. The drive was long, 3 hours with traffic. My sister and her cousin played the same artist on repeat the entire time,
singing at the top of their lungs. By the time we got to LA,
we were all exhausted and irritated. We spent the afternoon wandering around looking for food and restrooms. LA is row when you're broke and don't know the area. Eventually, we dropped my sister and her cousin off at the concert venue and decided to explore on our own. We ended up at Santa Monica, watched the sunset, then checked Yelp for a burger place. We found one that looked great. When we pulled up the directions and started driving, I didn't realize where we were going. We parked in a well-lit, populated area and went inside. The food was amazing, but as we walked back to the car, I looked up at one of the tall buildings lining the street. A sign at the top read, Hotel Cecil, low weekly rates, 700 rooms. My stomach dropped. The Cecil Hotel. If you don't know, the Cecil has a dark history. It was a popular hotel in the 1920s and 30s, but after the Great Depression, it became a haven for the homeless, addicts, and criminals.
Serial killers have stayed there.
People have died there. It's been mostly vacant for years, but as I stared up at it, I swear I saw movement inside. We were in Skid Row, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in LA. I grabbed my friends. We need to leave. Now, we hurried to the car. Across the street, I saw people looking into parked vehicles, scoping them out. They turned and looked at us. We got in the car and drove away as fast as we could. Later that night, after picking up my sister and her cousin, I was driving us home. It was almost 2 a.m. as I approached our neighborhood. I had to make a turn around a hill. That's when I saw them. A group of people, at least 15, standing on the grass divider in the middle of the road. They were all wearing white, bright, flowing white clothing.
Hoods covering their faces as my headlights hit them.
They started moving toward the car, raising their voices, shouting. Following alongside as I turned, I screamed. My sister and cousin,
half asleep in the back, groggily asked what was wrong. Did you see them?
I shouted. They hadn't. But I know what I saw, and I know they wanted me to stop. I didn't. I drove around the block a few times, making sure they weren't following, before finally pulling into our driveway. To this day, I don't know what I saw. A cult? The KKK? Some kind of ritual? I don't know, but I know one thing. I never stopped the car, and I'm glad I didn't. Story 9. The Doll Returns. Something in the creek. When I was a teenager, my friend Nathan and I spent a lot of time kayaking on the Hawkesbury River in Australia. There was this small, slow-moving creek nearby, adjacent to an abandoned golf course that we explored constantly. We even built a little jetty out of sticks and baling twine so we could tee up the kayak while we explored the surrounding area. The golf course was eerie. No animals, no birds, no insects, just silence. Every sound you made echoed back at you from a nearby sandstone cliff. One time, we found a full kangaroo skeleton in the middle of a clearing, sun-bleached and scattered. I took the skull home and put it on my bookshelf. On our next trip, we decided to explore the creek further. We armed ourselves with machetes and a hatchet, hacking through vines and dense riverweed. That's when I saw it, a doll's head, floating just below the surface of the water. Light blue eyes staring up at me. Nathan reached down and pulled it out, grinning.
Let's call him Bob. I placed the head on the front of the kayak, facing outward.
Like a figurehead in an old ship, but when I looked back a few seconds later, Bob was facing me. I hadn't moved him. We struck a submerged tree. Everything on the kayak jumped forward, except Bob. He didn't move an inch. Nathan and I exchanged a look, unsettled. We turned the kayak around and headed home. That night, I stuffed Bob into my pocket, went home, and tossed him onto my bed while I went to dinner. When I came back, he was gone. I searched everywhere. Couldn't find him. The next morning, I woke up and froze. Bob was on the shelf, next to the kangaroo skull. Staring at me, I jumped up, woke Nathan and showed him.
He swore he didn't put it there. I grabbed Bob, marched into the kitchen and threw him in the trash. Problem solved, right?
Months later, my mum found something in the front yard, right beneath where the garbage bin sat. She picked it up, washed it off, and put it on my bookshelf. It was Bob. When I walked into my room, there he was, staring at me again. This time, I swear he was smirking. I searched for him later that day. Couldn't find him. Years passed. Nathan and I went back to the creek, just for old time's sake. Our jetty was still there, untouched, like new. As we stepped onto shore, I kicked something in the dirt. I bent down and pulled it free. The hatchet, the one I'd lost years ago. My stepfather's monogrammed hatchet. There was no way it should have been there. We were the only ones who visited this spot. We both stood in silence, staring at it. Then we looked out at the creek. A dead cow floated in the center. Bloated and rotting, a storm was rolling in. Nathan and I looked at each other. We never went back to that creek again. And so our night together comes to an end. 9 stories.
9 lives touched by terror.
9 reminders that the world is stranger and darker than we like to believe. Some of these stories have explanations. Some don't. Some end with justice. Others end with questions, but all of them are real. Real people. Real fear.
Real scars. If you made it this far, thank you, truly. If this video helped you relax,
Helped you sleep, or simply gave you a moment to escape, then it served its purpose. If you have a story of your own, something that happened to you, something you've never been able to explain, I'd love to hear it. The link to submit is in the description below, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. I'll be here every week bringing you more stories, more rain, more darkness. Until next time, stay safe. Lock your doors, check your windows, and remember, not all monsters hide in the shadows. Some of them walk in broad daylight, some of them smile, some of them
are real.